Notaries do not casually tell their clients that inheritance is not just about material goods, but also about responsibility, which includes the obligation to pay taxes. Often, the burden of such debts falls on the unprepared heir, compelling them to take desperate measures. For most of her life, Riley practiced rhythmic gymnastics with quiet dedication, gradually reaching the rank of candidate for Master of Sports. At the same time, she graduated high school with excellent grades and went on to pursue higher education at a prestigious university. All of this was made possible by her father Matteo, who owned a large company producing various metal structures, a business that started in the early cooperative era and, though not quickly, had grown into a small factory on the outskirts of a large city. Riley's mother passed away unacceptably and unfairly young. Cancer rarely spares anyone, and even the wealthiest men and women can die without ever understanding why they were subjected to such trials in this life or a previous one. This is why Matteo worked hard to provide for his daughter, the only person dear to him. Handing Riley one bundle of cash after another, her father practically lived at work, earning the necessary sums for everything they needed. This inevitably led to a significant loss of connection between father and daughter. No, they didn't fight or fall into a typical parent-child conflict, but, to put it mildly, they became increasingly disinterested in each other's lives, mistakenly believing that everything was just fine. It's also important not to think that Riley harbored any ill feelings toward her father. She loved her strong, masculine dad, who remained calm and rational even in the most desperate situations. The loss of contact was something entirely different. Simply put, two close individuals began to live like business partners, failing to engage with each other's emotions, dreams, and aspirations. Even when Riley's mother lay dying, Matteo outwardly appeared calm, accepting condolences with grace and composure even on the day of the funeral. It was only late in the evening, while walking to her room in their large two-story mansion, that Riley saw her father from behind, his powerful shoulders trembling with genuine anguish, carefully hidden from those around him, family and business partners, but released in solitude with overwhelming force. In that moment, Riley found herself unable to muster the courage to approach him and place a hand on his shoulder. Regretting her indecisiveness profoundly, she often reflected on that moment afterward. After her mother's death and finishing school, Riley pursued a degree in finance while also enrolling in expensive business courses. Since her teenage years, she understood that she was destined to follow in her father's footsteps and would strive to start her own business. Of course, the production of metal structures intrigued her little. However, in the age of online shopping, Riley planned to establish her own retail chain and engage in convenient and profitable mediation for delivering goods to customers. Fortunately, she had just graduated from university and completed an additional education program when new, frightening events disrupted her life. Riley's father fell ill suddenly. He had hidden his illness for a long time, which, due to weak and inadequate treatment, progressed to pneumonia, requiring emergency hospitalization. The best doctors fought to save Matteo's life but ultimately could not, despite their best efforts. The new funeral took place so quickly that Riley involuntarily formed the illusion that almost a year had passed between her mother's passing and her father's. But this was a false perception. The actual gap was nearly 8 years, which made her deeply contemplate the fleetingness of human existence as clods of earth, one after another, were tossed from warm hands onto the elegant wooden casket. Everything unfolded similarly to her mother's funeral, same rituals, wreaths, words of condolence, and a memorial dinner. But this time, it fell solely on Riley to maintain her composure and respond to inquiries from relatives and acquaintances. As night fell, and after the casket was buried and the last guests had left the tables, she found herself in the same corner of the second floor, nearly in the same spot where her father had mourned the premature loss of his wife, and there she sobbed loudly. Just like her father, she had absolutely no idea how to live or what to do next. Meanwhile, life moved on, forcing her to do what everyone does when they inherit. The inheritance process itself unfolded without any incidents. An elderly man, Levi, their family's personal notary and longtime friend, read the final message from the head of the family, which stated that all assets were to be transferred to his daughter. Almost immediately after the formalities concluded, creditors and unsavory individuals began arriving at Riley's office, politely yet firmly making it clear that her debts needed to be settled quickly. Moreover, as it turned out in the first weeks following the inheritance, Matteo had incurred such serious debts that selling their home would be necessary due to the extensive obligations they faced. Even the house sale did not guarantee full debt repayment. This situation had been worsening for quite some time, well before the virus unexpectedly struck the world, obliterating one private business after another. And, like thousands of other similar examples of bankruptcy and shattered dreams, the prolonged human crisis effectively crippled her father's company, as orders sharply declined and workers, no longer receiving wages, began leaving their jobs. Desperate to rectify the situation, the heiress employed all the methods and techniques she had learned in her higher education courses. Unfortunately, the harsh reality proved far more challenging than the academic curriculum. None of the legal avenues worked in the crisis, leading Riley to seriously contemplate unlawful methods to formally transfer the company and the debts to a third party. A detailed conversation with the notary, who had once certified the transfer of the company from father to daughter, took place behind closed doors. "There's nothing wrong or scary about this," the elderly specialist assured the girl. "Of course, this maneuver won't protect you from private lenders, they will still get what they want by any means necessary. However, the bank will have to seek repayment specifically from the new owner of the company, who will sign the entire package of documents. This includes a clause in the contract where the new owner agrees, as an added risk in exchange for a significant discount, to take on the company's main debts. Don't worry. I will sign all the contracts and associated documents in such a way that the company will come back to you once the crisis has passed. So, are you ready to go along with an illegal scheme to preserve the business?" "Yes, but where do I find such a person?" Riley asked, sitting at the polished oak desk, leaning on its surface with her elbows and clutching her head with both hands. "It seems to me that the most desperate people, even those without a fixed home and burdened by a million life problems, wouldn't want to get involved in this kind of thing." "That's correct, my dear. In memory of your father, I'm only willing to assist with the paperwork. All other actions will have to be taken by you." "I understand. Then head to the market on the industrial outskirts." "Do you know the place I mean?" "Yes. I went there as a child with my mother to buy fresh meat and milk." "Good." In the city, among certain categories of specialists, this place is informally referred to as the Dock of Lost Souls, because it's where you can find many individuals who have sunk to the depths of society. Interestingly, among the various unkempt faces, you can sometimes find PhD holders and renowned athletes whose lives have taken a turn for the worse for various reasons. And, of course, it's home to the most desperate people in the city who are willing to do anything just to earn enough for a cheap bottle of alcohol. "Thank you, Levi. I'll try to find the person I need. Just be careful. Once you're beyond the market fence, among the containers, even the laws lose their authority. If possible, take at least 2 strong companions with you." "No, I'll do it all myself, thank you." Feeling a mix of excitement and fear, Riley got into her luxurious SUV, which she could lose soon if she didn't take appropriate measures to preserve her assets, and headed toward that remote part of the city, which had long since gained a reputation as a concentration of criminal elements in the community. The closer her car got to the market, the grayer the landscape became. One crooked concrete fence replaced another, and the old factory buildings loomed ominously with their shattered windows and severely dilapidated appearances. The market had long transformed into a large wholesale base where various goods could be purchased almost at manufacturer prices. But this line of rusty gates, garages, and storage warehouses had to be passed to reach the outskirts and enter the unofficial job market for the city's most desperate individuals. The place indeed matched its reputation. A vast, overgrown and filthy wasteland stretched toward a distant woodlet, filled with concrete debris in heaps of broken bricks. Between the field and the city's edge, several large bonfires flickered in an uneven row along the last and longest concrete wall. Some bonfires burned on the ground while others were in barrels. Around each unsteady flame, people of the most marginalized appearance congregated in various clusters. Some of them had such sallow complexions that against the backdrop of the dreary sky, they inadvertently evoked thoughts of despair and hopelessness. Trying to appear confident and experienced in such matters, Riley stopped by the nearest bonfire. Gripping her pepper spray tightly in her right hand, she rolled down her car window and almost choked on the acrid, distinctive smell emanating from the people and the place itself. "Good day," she politely greeted the nearest marginalized individuals. "I need a specific service." "Good day. What do you need?" grumbled the cleanest-looking man in the group, dressed somewhat more decently than the others and possessing broad shoulders. "I need someone who won't hesitate to sign a few documents." "Got it. So you have debts." The taciturn man continued the conversation that clearly indicated he was in charge. "Yes. Give me $5,000 right now, and my people," he gestured to his companions, "will bring you the right person." "Are you taking him?" "Probably, yes." Riley inwardly shuddered at the thought of taking an unknown individual to her home and the potential consequences. "Fine. Asher. Owen," he called to his closest companions, "bring in the newcomer. The one who tried to start a fight here the day before yesterday and was insisting on his point. Isaac. He won't agree to that," one of the assistants began to protest. "Bring him in," I said. "I can sense people. He's already ready to go to extremes. He has nothing left to lose. Losing his wife and daughter in an instant and then surviving the accident. Essentially, he has two options: to agree to this venture or to take his own life. So, lead him here." Indeed, the man who was literally dragged in by the leader's assistants and seated in the car appeared completely lost to society, though he still retained a semblance of sociality. His dirty exterior belied a hint of intellect, and the stranger, dressed in a tank top, trousers, and strangely wearing winter boots despite the summer, stubbornly and unconsciously adjusted his glasses, which were taped at the bridge with blue duct tape. Yes. People like that definitely don't return to normal life, the girl thought involuntarily. "Don't worry. He'll do everything right," Isaac commented on the situation. "Here, fulfilling a client's wish is the law. Everyone here is willing to jump into the lion's mouth if it benefits the community." With great difficulty suppressing her gag reflexes and paying the required amount of money, Riley, still holding the pepper spray in her hands, drove toward home. On the way, the stranger, who was clearly intoxicated, came to his senses several times, mumbled something inaudible in an incomprehensible language and again went into oblivion. But, just before the final stop of the route, suddenly, he looked sharply forward, in the rearview mirror, and frighteningly asked, "Zoe?" No, not Zoe. Riley realized that, even if only for a moment, the stranger saw her as his late spouse. "I can see she isn't," the man sighed. "Where are we going?" "The man who actually sold you to me said you would be able to sign some documents." "Yes, documents," the dejected man replied indifferently. "Yes. Any contract. I even have a passport." "That's good. But on one condition." "On what?" "I need clothes, food and a shower." "That's what we're going for." "I need you to look good. By the way, what's your name?" "Caleb." "I'm Caleb," the man pretended to lift an invisible hat with his hand. "Good. My name is Riley. We're almost there." "Just. What? Can you make it home by yourself?" "I'll show you to your bedroom." "I just don't feel like driving you." "I understand. Any other requests?" "Don't hurt me, please," muttered Riley quite honestly, who was beginning to be genuinely afraid that she had started all this in the first place. "No, not at all, I wouldn't even think of it. You have the same brown eyes as my wife and daughter. Do you need alcohol?" "No. I never sign documents while intoxicated. I need until tomorrow to clean myself up." "Good. I'll just about pick you up something from my father's clothes." Before entering the mansion grounds, the still inebriated Caleb looked around, saw the nearest trash can, and, first thing he did was remove all of his clothes, leaving only his underwear on. "You're going to have to throw it away anyway. So I'd better do it right away," the new acquaintance explained his strange actions. Riley looked around fearfully, greatly fearing that some of the neighbors would see these strange manipulations at the garbage can. But fortunately, it was already starting to get dusk outside, so even in the event that one of her neighbors was looking out the window, it was highly unlikely that person would be able to make out anything in particular. "Nice house," Caleb appraised the two-story mansion. "Yes. We had a separate room for the housekeeper, with a separate entrance. It's empty now. You go that way," the mansion's lone owner pointed with her hand to a small front door on the side of the brick building. "That's it, I got it. I'll bring your clothes to you in a bag on the porch. Deal. And in the morning, about 8 o'clock, I'll come by to pick you up. If you don't run away, of course. And I wouldn't dare, Riley. I'm almost in love with you already." Caleb smiled and disappeared behind the door. When, an hour later, the mistress of the mansion brought in a large bag of her father's clothes, she obviously heard the sound of water coming from behind the door and realized that the new acquaintance was taking a shower. After retreating to the main part of the house, Riley very carefully locked all the doors, hid the knives and placed the pepper spray on the bedside table. Moreover, just in case, she once again remembered the cipher from her father's safe, where in addition to the hunting carbine there was a pistol. All night long Riley tossed and turned, and it was not until morning that she was able to fall asleep. She dreamed of her father, who smiled and looked at his daughter. Her mother was standing next to her father, slightly hugging the man by the shoulders, her face lost in a gray haze. Mateo was saying a lot of things to his daughter, but in the morning Riley remembered only the main point: good man. Believe, and hoped very much that her late father's admonition applied specifically to the new acquaintance she'd actually bought on the city's outskirts. The awakening was extremely sudden. Someone was making noise with the kitchen utensils downstairs. Riley realized that despite the locked doors, Caleb had somehow made his way into the house and was already quite independently searching for food. Grabbing the now familiar pepper spray, the mistress of the mansion went downstairs and was extremely surprised. In the kitchen, dressed in light athletic pants and a clean t-shirt, stood a broad-shouldered, thin, but quite handsome man who had not only washed himself clean, but even skillfully cut his hair with the simplest of scissors. "Sorry, I didn't sleep," Caleb smiled, startling the girl with his even white teeth. "I'm just having nightmares." "How did you get into the house?" "Riley, before we met, I had spent almost 3 years on the streets. And, you know, I'm used to getting where I need to go by any means necessary. Don't worry, if I wanted to harm or injure you, I would have done it on the way here. Will you eat?" The unfamiliar man changed the subject abruptly. "I made an omelette for 2. "I don't want," lied Riley, whose stomach treacherously made a loud sound indicating that she was hungry. "Stop it, my dear." Caleb clearly demonstrated his perfectly clean hands. "I spent at least 3 hours in the shower yesterday. So everything is as sterile as the finest restaurants. And at breakfast you can take your time and explain to me in detail what is required of me." Seated on both sides of the oblong table, the new acquaintances first satisfied their hunger and, only after cups of coffee, came to the discussion of the main question. "So what's actually required of me?" Caleb drank the beverage with relish, clearly understanding the value of bean coffee. "To be the formal owner of my firm for a month." "Got it. What's your specialty?" "Metal construction." "Not the most in-demand field right now, is it?" "Yes, Caleb. That's why I need you." "What time is the meeting with the notary?" The man looked at the watch on his arm. "Where did you get it?" Riley was indignant, recognizing the expensive accessory unmistakably. "Look, you'd still need to dress me very presentably one way or another. I'd have to pose as a director for a month to make the creditors really believe that the firm has been rebought by me, not to simply pass on the debts. Yes, I need to accessorize accordingly. Don't worry, I'll pay you back. It's my father's watch. And they're special to me. I'd rather buy you another one. Riley. There's no need to buy anything. I'll put it back now, but I do wish you would trust me a little more than you do now. After all, you and I have a very interesting business in common. And by the way, pepper spraying indoors is stupid, you could hurt yourself. Caleb nodded downward, as if his gaze was penetrating under the table. Sorry. This is just the first time I've been on a venture like this, and I'm in a desperate situation. I understand. And you're a very brave young woman. I had Zoe just like that, desperate and beautiful. And the daughter. The daughter in general embodied the best of our traits. Caleb fell silent, sinking into warm memories for a while. At that moment Riley felt truly sorry for him, for the tragedy that the market man had fleetingly mentioned had clearly had a catastrophic effect on Caleb, on his social standing and on his perception of the world. Leave the watch, Riley agreed with a sigh, but I'll pick it up later. Of course, Caleb perked up, coming back to reality, we need to get ready. Before we go to the notary, we need to stop by a transformer station. That's where I left my passport so I wouldn't lose it while wandering the streets. Caleb was not lying again. The necessary package of documents, neatly wrapped in a cellophane bag, was indeed found under the concrete foundation of a small transformer substation on the outskirts, in the yard of a residential building. Next was the scheduled visit to the notary Levi, who had just had time to prepare all the necessary documents. Riley's new acquaintance signed every piece of paper without even looking at the wording. It was only after signing everything that he read the text. Wow. I'm really taking over the business entirely, Caleb smiled, you're a desperate woman, Riley. Your suspiciously young man is suspiciously educated. The experienced notary squinted his eyes at the previously unknown man, and it seems to me, Riley, that you should have chosen another candidate. Have no fear, Levi. That's why I signed the documents first, and then started reading, so that you would have no doubts about my integrity. I do have a question, however. What is it? Asked Riley, involuntarily expecting a catch. And if I get my affairs in order in a month, will you keep me as your personal assistant? I don't need the firm. Suddenly I'm socialized, Caleb laughed as if he had voiced a very funny joke. That's impossible, the notary laughed maliciously and a little contemptuously, there's no staff, and the debts have accumulated too much. All the more interesting this wager, Caleb suddenly became very serious, so. Personal assistant, Riley looked at the man who was increasingly revealing himself to her from the most unexpected sides. Well, it's a deal, but let it be known that there are surveillance cameras in my office. I will personally review the footage every night so you don't get too caught up in your role as principal. Riley, you risk nothing, Caleb insisted on his format of the arrangement, and I'm not even forcing you to seal our verbal contract with any document. The notary is on your side from the start, since he supervises you on such matters and cases. For the sake of the purity of this experiment, why don't you review the records on the eve of the completion of my formal leadership? In fact, I suggest you get out of town for a month. Make up your mind. I've agreed to risk everything. And you only a very small amount of the firm's assets, the debts for which I will have to pay anyway. Don't agree, Levi tried to express his opinion, but Riley beat him to it. Agreed, said the young woman, and thus, for the first time in her life, gave herself completely over to the uncontrollable flow of events. The blissful month of unexpected rest began very roughly. At first Riley sincerely wanted to break the contract and at least briefly look through time and distance into her father's office, where the strange vagabond, who had suddenly become the real director of the enterprise for a month's term, was making some decisions of his own. However, the woman overpowered herself not to do so and set off on a trip to see the sights she had long put off visiting. The tour ended quickly and Riley headed to the next country, where she had a great time admiring the mountain beauty and enjoying the resort hotels. The final stage of the vacation was the mountain lakes, which amazed her with their beautiful scenery. And there, in a cozy tourist cabin, Riley suddenly realized that she was absolutely happy and had not worried about anything for a week and a half, having resigned herself to any consequences in advance. On the eve of finalizing her contract with Caleb, Riley arrived home and turned on the videotape. It wasn't possible to watch all the material, but sometimes, in the accelerated recording of images and events, it was possible to correctly identify key points that were major changes at her father's firm. Caleb immediately solved the personnel problem by calling a man he knew well from his visit to the market. Silent and sullen Isaac, remaining almost motionless during the accelerated recording, listened to the arguments and suggestions of his former subordinate, nodded and shook his hand. Within 2 days, literally every machine had the right person standing at it, performing the job duties in place of the laid-off workers. Next, Caleb sold several machines, which were considered to be the main ones in the company, in order to acquire startup capital. And, according to documents found in the mail, he wrote good projects and made a nice presentation of the firm, offering the lowest price among competitors. Therefore, as the documents and notices said, he was able to win state tenders for the manufacture of several large metal structures for general city purposes, for which he bought new machines, but still old. That is, going against the rules and foundations, the new director embodied the scale of work that Mateo had never dreamed of. Quickly reviewing the financial documents, Riley realized that not only did she have all the money she needed to pay off her immediate debts, but her prospects were pretty good. If things went as well as they were, she would get rid of all debt altogether. However, for that to happen, Caleb had to agree to continue to fulfill the duties of her personal assistant, rather than give up everything and actually win the bet. It is hard to put into words how grateful Riley was to Caleb at the moment of their new meeting. The woman literally ran out of the car and, in a burst of emotion, hugged the slightly fat man, who in just 1 month had accomplished the impossible achievement of paying off creditors and laying the foundation for financial stability. Quickly signing the appropriate documents transferring ownership of the firm to Riley, the principal and her personal assistant went to a nearby restaurant to celebrate the unexpected and happy conclusion of their agreement. "Caleb, would you like to order wine? Maybe a cognac? Any kind you want," Riley inquired as she looked over the menu. "No," the real hero smiled, "I've decided I'm not going to use alcohol anymore. It, at first, helped me cope with my loss, but its use quickly led me to the horrible cafe of my life." "What were you before you were on the streets?" First and foremost, a happy father and loving husband, Caleb became visibly saddened, and also a crisis manager who was hired by various people when the situation became like yours. "I've certainly never managed in a month before, but your situation has forced me to not only think harder, but to a whole other professional level. You see how we've helped each other," Riley smiled, "and I'm glad you've continued to work with me, restoring not only your situation, but mine as well." "Not quite yet," Caleb replied cryptically, accepting the first course from the waiter. "There are a few important steps left to take." "What are they?" Riley was clearly intrigued and for once was not expecting a catch at all. "Marry you and have a baby." Caleb didn't even have an eyebrow quiver after saying that. "Believe me, I'll soon regain my former form and be able to clearly demonstrate that I'm still worth the attention of such a beautiful woman. You are too much like Zoe." As if it were a sign from above. "I owe it to myself to try and build my happiness all over again." Not only did Riley not know what to say in response, she literally froze at what she heard. "I understand that everything needs to be thought through. Take your time. By the way, I am returning your father's watch to you, as per our agreement." Caleb undid the lock, intending to hand the family heirloom back. "No, Caleb, leave it," Riley replied, to whom her ability to think had returned. "I wanted to give this watch to my spouse anyway, if I truly loved someone. But I thought true love came abruptly, and it turns out it's born gradually through admiration for a man and respect from a man." "That's good." Caleb buckled his watch strap. "Now, I'm sorry, but I need to eat. I haven't slept or eaten properly in almost a month."
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. "Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room. One had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. how about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.